political body SMART, Innovations in Governance. And as a first person on stage, I'll invite Mr. Bipul Pathak, Commissioner cum Secretary, Department of Housing and Urban Development, Government of Jammu and Kashmir on stage. A round of applause for Mr. Pathak, please. Then I invite Mr. Rajiv Yaduvanshi, Commissioner cum Secretary, Department of Urban Development, Andaman and Nicobar Administration. A round of applause for Mr. Rajiv. Sir, we welcome you on stage. Then Mr. M.S. Padhi, Secretary, Food Supplies and Consumer Welfare Department, Government of Odisha. A round of applause for Mr. Padhi from Odisha, please. Mr. Sanjay Jaju, Director, National Highways Infrastructure Development Corporation Limited. Please invite Mr. Jaju with a round of applause on stage. Mr. Naveen Sona, Director General of Vanamati, Government of Maharashtra. Sir, I invite you on stage, please. Mr. Naveen Sona. I invite Mr. Ashutosh Pednekar, Commissioner, Jaipur Municipal Corporation on stage, please. Mr. Ashutosh Pednekar, Commissioner of Jaipur Municipal Corporation. Okay, he's not here. Mr. Jagan Shah, Director, National Institute of Urban Affairs. A round of applause for Mr. Shah, please. Mr. P.S.N. Rao, Chairman, Delhi Urban Arts Commission. And last but not the least, Mr. P.L. Sharma, Chief Town Planner, Town Planning and Valuation, Government of Gujarat. Do we have him? Yeah? Okay. Mr. Sharma is not here. So, now I request Mr. Bipul Pathak to please address. Okay, panel discussion. Okay. So, as suggested by Mr. Pathak also, it will be a panel discussion, and moderate. Who can moderate? Sure. Mr. Pathak. Okay, so we're requesting Mr. Bipul Pathak to moderate this session, and over to you, sir.
Is this working? Okay. First of all, I'm thankful to Ravi and ELETS for organizing this conference at a most opportune time. Many of you would know that in the ministry today is the last day for sending the nominations from the state government for smart cities to be selected in the second challenge. And since morning they are after most of us who are the secretaries in the urban development department to do their job in time. And but let us listen to the views from officers who are here and people who are in the town planning and Mr. Shah also. But since Mr. Sanjay has to go a little early, I would say that he should start the session, and let's see what about innovations in the smart city and the urban space from him.
Thank you, Bipul. Of course, I'm not in the urban sector right now, but I've worked as municipal commissioners in Visakhapatnam and Hyderabad. It's almost 5.5 to 6 years. So let me just present to you my views on what a smart city entails based on my experiences in Hyderabad and Visakhapatnam, and how we should be going about it. I mean, it's become a good fad in the current times to keep talking about everything smart. Now, this all started actually. If you look at the concept of a smart city, it was a technological jargon in the sense that where you bring in information technology tools into a city and make the city infrastructure become smart. That means without any intervention, the city is able to sense what is happening and then find solutions to mitigate the problems which the city is facing. But to my mind, calling a city a smart city, especially in the Indian context, we will have to remove the jargon part of it and consider this to be a very holistic concept as to what a city should be. And to my mind, if you look at any Indian city, fundamentally you will realize that before we kind of put in sensors where traffic is monitored in a real-time basis and based on that solutions are provided to a particular city, we will have to set our city's infrastructure in order. And in order to make a city smart, first we will have to figure out the basic infrastructure, essentially in terms of the urban transport or drinking water supply or sewerage or stormwater systems. So primarily we'll have to look at the infrastructure and number one, make the infrastructure become good enough, then make it robust, and then look at bringing in technology solutions to ensure that that infrastructure runs in a kind of an efficient manner. The second aspect which I was very closely involved with was in terms of governance. You will all appreciate that cities are at the grassroots level of administration in our country. In fact, right from they used to tell me when I was a municipal commissioner that it's a journey from the womb to the tomb that the corporations or the municipal bodies basically get engaged with as far as human lives are concerned. So you have, for example, a very basic regulatory task in terms of getting in a birth certificate or being able to pay the municipal taxes or being able to purchase water from the municipal bodies, or in many cases even purchase electricity as in Delhi or in Bombay, or in terms of getting various licenses, in terms of trade licenses, in terms of regulatory permissions. Then you have the town planning permissions where local bodies control the building regulations, and then you need to take permissions for not just building constructions but doing layouts, doing improvements in the buildings that are there. And in terms of meeting the fire standards, there are a whole range of permissions and regulatory requirements which ultimately the cities need to deliver. So the second aspect which has to become smart would have to be the governance part. How many cities in our country are still able to provide online services? Online services not just through citizen centers, a thing which would look quite dated now, but through their websites or through a smartphone these days. So how many cities in the country are able to provide to their citizens governance solutions in a more user-friendly format? That is the second aspect that we will have to look at if we are trying to look at the city in terms of being a smart city. The third aspect of the city to be a smart city would have to be in terms of the citizen participation. Because all of you would agree that in a democratic situation, and these are the lowest and the what you call the ground level democratic institutions, it will be very important that we bring in citizen participation in not just the governance processes, but in terms of shaping up and building up the infrastructure that's required. So in the Indian context, what I understand from the context of a smart city would have to be putting the entire pedestal of the city government on three very strong and robust fundamentals. One of them would have to be smart infrastructure. Number two would have to be smart governance. And third would have to be the smart participation, wherein we bring in all the stakeholders, take all their views, and bring these processes together. So to my mind, we will have to separate the Indian story from the global story. There are global solutions. We have seen it in South Korea, and there are many other cities where fundamentally technology players have put in sensors right from security down to the traffic, down to the stormwater, down to the movement of people into a particular neighborhood. All those things are being monitored through various sensors, data being transmitted, and big data analytics being put in, and they call that to be the smart solution for a particular city. But I think for an Indian situation, what will require is a different and a holistic concept, because the starting point for Indian cities is definitely not the point at which most of the global cities are. So we'll need to look at all these solutions, and then only we can call a city a smart city. This, to my mind, has come out of the experience that I had for 6 years while working as municipal commissioners in Hyderabad and Vizag. Obviously, a lot of water has flown through, but I am very happy that at least there's some talk and there is some competition being created in our country now. Wherein, as Bipul pointed out, they have been asked to send entries by today, and then based on that, they are going to be evaluating cities and considering them for various smart city solutions. But unless and until we bring these three fundamentals together, this would always remain a pipe dream. I'd like to again thank Ravi. I have actually a meeting at 3, and I thought that I'll be here, spend some time and listen to most of the views. But I'll possibly ask Bipul about what happened in the panel today and try and learn from what's going around. So let me apologize for rushing through and leaving the panel early. And I wish Ravi, Alex, and this conclave all success. And I'm sure the deliberations and the views that get expressed here would be reflected in the project reports which Bipul was talking about. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Sanjay. Because we started late and most of the panelists here are government officers and they are in a rush to go, I'll request Mr. Rajiv Yaduvanshi to take over the mic and give his views.
So, before one more speaker.
Yeah, before that, I would like to invite Mr. R. Siva, President and CEO of Windsor Solutions India Private Limited, onto the dais. Please join us. You will be making a technology presentation probably at the end of the session.
Excuse me.
Yeah.
Since morning we have had a one-way conversation.
Yeah.
The previous speaker spoke about citizen participation. So I thought at least a small interruption to the audience participation.
Okay.
I only wanted to congratulate the previous speaker. 17, 18 years back, you are a pioneer. You are ahead of times in terms of building Hyderabad. At that, it was ahead of time in all model, in every way. So my best wishes to you for building these two places, Hyderabad and Vizag. Again, one more ahead of the pack.
Thank you.
That's it? You want to respond?
No, I think he just made a comment. We're thankful to the compliment that you gave. Thank you very much.
Sir.
Thank you, Mr. Pathak. After the post-lunch session, it's a very heavy, difficult proposition to speak on a very heavy subject, which sub-parts of which are a subject matter and a specialization in itself. I just want to share my practical experiences. I looked after urban development in Delhi, and I handled issues. Then I went to Goa, where I was Secretary Urban Development and Panchayat, and I looked at urban and rural areas. Then I am Secretary Urban Development in Andamans right now. I handled the State Finance Commission reports of all the 3 territories, and that gave me a lot of insight into what are the state of affairs in strengthening the local bodies. And since we are talking since morning about smart cities, and finance is a very important role to fund our infrastructure, investments, technology, and what are the gaps you want to fulfill on the field. So I think the financing part plays a very important role. I had certain observations, and I am happy to note that good progress is being made on this matter in our country. Just before I give my views on that, just like to what I view as a smart city. Smart city would be an area of possibility and opportunity for growth of all the stakeholders. The stakeholders would be the government, the business, and the citizens living in this smart area. It's not a one-time activity, it's a continuous process. It's multi-pronged, involving multi-agency. It has to be always participating. We also want a faster pace of development in this area, but it has to be with balance. And the affordability is also an issue, which will always be there in this thing. So how the costing and finance has to be done. That's very important. The framework, the mission guidelines, and the statements which have Government of India has brought out, and it's very comprehensive. It involves the business participation. There are various models into it. But before we deal with that, we will have to look into in the federal structure itself, where the central budget and state budgets are, how they are dealt with. And we have the Central Finance Commission and the State Finance Commission. Both the commissions, and more important is the State Finance Commissions, they have to bring more funding to the local bodies. There's no two ways about it. But there has to be a synchronization between the State Finance Commission and the Central Finance Commission. Many times they are not in tune. If not, they have to be brought into place. Then the SFC reports have to be more empowering, enabling to the local bodies, and not of just like, you don't want to share power. And it's very happy state of affairs that some states have recognized it and moved ahead. Gujarat is a pioneering example where they have gone and supported the municipalities and the panchayats also. The various sources of funding which are VGF, other than this, PPP, and in the guidelines now these SPVs are also supposed to be set up. So this will be giving a new level of financing. Two areas is whether you start a new area or you retrofit your existing area because you have limitations. Maybe you identified the limitations but did not have the funding to refit your area. So both the things can be handled. Now, there are some structural issues which I came across in Delhi. Was the big size of the municipalities. When I was there, the municipality was proposed to be the Municipal Corporation of Delhi into 3 parts, and it was later got subdivided. Only how to handle it. And the electric supply was taken away from the municipality. I piloted this Delhi Jal Board bill, where water supply and sewage disposal undertaking was taken outside municipality and considered as a special area. So this brought in a lot of efficiency. But when we look at various states, and what would be the take-home point was that what is the level of urbanization in various states? Some states are in a range of 15 to 20% of urban area, rest is rural. Like Gujarat is going 30 and above. States like Gujarat, Goa would be 50-50 rural-urban. So if you've reached a 50-50 area, I think urbanization in rural areas, I think that is a happy state of affairs where you need both the areas to support each other. There's various departments which are there where gaps could be there. I had a look at more of the functional point of view, like water. You have to plan your water per capita LPCD, liters per capita per day. So what is your source? How much water treatment plants you want to set up? There's a costing to it. So that has to be done in a proper manner. LPCD is the area to start. Then your drains also you have to plan, because in India the stormwater drains and are not given much emphasis, and it ends up like that the stormwater drains become like sewers. So sewage disposal is also linked to the water supply, what you make, and plan accordingly. The solid waste also, a lot of material is there. I would not like to delve into. But in the power supply, I think now the few new focus areas is the solar power. And I think where the potential exists, this is one area where we have to really grow and integrate into our areas. Then transport is a very critical area. Here, the distance between the home and the work, that's very important. What is the cost? What is the time involved? If the time is more than 2 hours a day, I think we have to reorient and rethink whether you want to live in an area or work in an area. Health and education also is important. One of the neglected areas is regarding the skills. Now, when we are talking about IT and growth of IT, enabled solutions, etc., skilling is becoming very important. And how we are organizing our ITIs, our polytechnics, has to be looked into. You can't be having only one skill. Multi-skilling will be required, and how to find jobs suited to your skills. Changing is very fast. So more and more people will have to be skilled. They have to find the right jobs. And how the whole thing could be brought together into an area. So it's basically an economic concept. We don't have absolute advantages, but every area or a city would have its peculiar features on which it can build its strength upon. What could be the core activity or a group of activities on which to leverage the economy? So if that is identified, I think the whole organizations can be done of the city around that, and that character of the city can be built. There has to be an identity and ownership also. Because with this character and identity is not there, people will get lost. There have been, the government has taken efforts to organize its resident welfare associations, etc. We started an exercise in Delhi where we started on the FM radio, etc. And later on it got developed into a big concept. So that could be a learning example. But involvement of the people is always there. It is required. I think if these factors are taken into considerations, the people become smart. They'll build smart places and cities. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Now I'll request Mr. Madhusudan will you make a presentation? No, I'll just speak from there. Okay, sure. Please go ahead, sir.
Good afternoon, everybody. Good afternoon, respected panelists on the dais. The smart city concept has actually taken over our country in the past 1 year with the declaration that 100 smart cities will be built in the budget speech of Honorable Finance Minister. And but then, as mentioned by speakers in the morning, our smart cities cannot be just replica of European or American cities. They have to rise from the ground, and they have to be, as Sanjay mentioned, they have to have a lot of component of participation of the people, because it is people who make up a city, not of course infrastructure is basic requirement, but just putting infrastructure is not going to help. In fact, today the cities have a lot of issues, because smart city concept is basically integrating various systems, whether it is transport system or energy systems or people related systems relating to safety, health, education, or policy and regulations, communications, water, energy. All this needs to be integrated. But today we have most of the urban local bodies are having many silos, like every department is working in silos, which we need to sort of break down and integrate them. This is an integral part before we think of any city to sort of make it smart and all the transactions, if something is happening at one place, it should be available to other users, and then decision can be taken accordingly. And so therefore the first step should be to break down these silos, build partnerships, collaborations, and then with all the stakeholders, then only it is possible to sort of go ahead. Otherwise, it will not be possible to actually go for anything. We may build up many independent systems, but they will be stumbling one after another. I just one small company, local company, has built up a application called My City, My Pride for Bhubaneswar, which is actually more of a grievance redressal system, and which is involving people's participation with respect to street light, with respect to drinking water, solid waste collection and management, and the problems on the road with respect to potholes. So the application is basically if people can, if somebody is going and instead of going to the corporation office, somebody can just go to the application and say that this and this street light is not functioning, or is the lights are not functioning, or solid waste is not being collected. He or she can take a photo, upload it, and immediately the process goes to in the system, it goes to the concerned officer or the authority person who is supposed to take care of this, and a message goes to the complainant as to that your complaint has been received and it has been forwarded, and you will be informed about its completion. So when the matter is sorted out, then it is then the process, then it is updated, and it's sort of a compliance. So by this, the efficiency of maintenance of these services has gone up quite a bit, and also sort of accountability. But not all areas are actually participating in this year. This is hardly 6 months old, but then slowly with media coverage, this is gaining attention. So anybody can also see that it is available on the iPad and also on the smartphone. It can be assessed. So so this I thought I will share, because this is one application apart from which has been mentioned. Instead of going to a kiosk, people will now demand services on their mobiles, services on their iPads, which they can access easily at any time, and they can use it. But urban areas, as has been mentioned by Secretary Urban Development, Andaman Nicobar, urbanization is an important factor. Like if the level of urbanization is very low, like 15 to 20%, then we need to have some strategy for converting the existing urban areas. There is a lot of scope, because a lot of areas are now developing. Then the land area is available, planning is possible, and also a lot of integration is possible. But if it is fully developed, it is difficult to implement many ideas, many systems or infrastructure. So there are challenges in both the sides. But even then, a city must sort of find its feet so as to give the best services to all the stakeholders, whether he is a wage earner or he is a rich businessman. Everybody should be able to benefit from the city, because it is the main driver of growth, and also it provides maximum employment with respect to the resources that it consumes. So the future of world is in urbanization, because we find today more people are staying in cities than in rural areas. I think for last 4 years, the urban population has crossed the rural population world over. And in India also it is increasing every census. And we've, in another 30 years, I think India will also cross that threshold of 50% urbanization. And by that time, since our cities are very big, unplanned, if we do not plan from today, we will not be able to really cope up with the problem. We do not have the luxury of vast expanse of land for most of our cities. So there is very, it is very necessary and extremely timely to take care of the limited resources and use it to the best efficient manner possible. I think with this, these are some of the issues I thought I will flag. As mentioned by people, I have actually a flight to catch. So this meeting was actually delayed, so I have not been able to stay on for the entire thing. With the permission of the chair and all of you, I will like to thank you for giving me an opportunity, and especially Ellets Media and Raviji for calling me to participate here. and sharing some of my views. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you very much. Thank you. Before I invite Professor P.S.N. Rao, Chairman, Delhi Urban Arts Commission, I would request the participants, if they have any questions, please note it down. Just before the presentations, we'll take questions and I'll try to address along with the co-panelists. But I would be happy if the questions are, consolidated and then a consolidated reply is given. Professor Rao, please.
Thank you, Mr. Pathak, for accommodating me. I'm sorry, I am also in a hurry, but I'll try to spend some time with you here. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Firstly, I would like to thank the organizers for having me here. This is undoubtedly the topic of the day, the flavor of the season, smart cities. And as Sanjay Jaju said just now, everything has to be smart. Smart clothing, smart food, smart what have you. Everything has to be smart. Well, the first time I heard about smart, it was not in the form of a common noun, but it was more in the form of an acronym. Simple, moral, accountable, replicable, and transparent. That was a long time back. Today, we are looking at smart and smart cities in a slightly different context. Nevertheless, I think a lot of water has flown under the bridge. We have one conference on smart city in the morning and one in the afternoon, almost every other day. Well, this is I see this as a very healthy sign, because India is a large country, India is a diverse country, and cities have requirements which are very wide and varied. And fortunately, we do have technologies. Whether it is smart accounting, whether it is doing your water quality, whether it is electronic governance, what have you, virtually for everything there is a smart solution. There is a vendor waiting outside there saying that I can fix your problems. That is very encouraging prima facie. But we also have to remember that a major chunk of our GDP comes from our cities, and therefore it does make economic sense, at least, to invest in smart cities, but maybe not inclusive sense, because India still lives in its rural areas. Nevertheless, I would look at cities and smart cities primarily in two areas. One is plugging in technologies which can make the existing human settlement smart, which would mean that you have maybe water metering systems, you have a better water quality testing systems, or maybe improve your roads, improve your footpaths, improve your public transportation systems. All that is fine. My concern is when private investors come here and when they make investments into these smart technologies, they are expecting a return. And how is this return going to happen? Because again, there are some goods which are public goods where it's very difficult for us to charge. There are some goods which are private goods, which are toll goods in economics, where it is exclusion is possible and charging is possible. So when we are talking about the public realm in the city, we are talking about public goods and common pool goods, and charging there would become rather difficult. And I'm sure that the 48,000 crores that has been earmarked by the government of India, that would partly take into account, but I do see some kind of a concern here in the long run. This is point number one, which I want to drive home this afternoon. Point number two, which I want to drive home this afternoon, is that smart cities are also being fashioned as satellites that would be appended to the existing cities, because there is one view that, well, cities are there, they have been there the way they have been structured over a period of time, but then can we also start on a clean slate and have an enclave very close to the parent city, where we can have everything from scratch, built in a very modern manner, and bring in all these technologies that all of you are trying to portray.
that is a fantastic idea. That is also a part of the scheme of things in the whole smart city program as it is envisioned by the Ministry of Urban Development. Herein lies my concern is because today we have a lot of vacant housing stock that is already there, that is not being sold, because again I come back to my point of how are you going to recover the investments. Investments have to be recovered by way of sale of property, by way of sale of land, or by way of sale of built space. So therefore, unless and until we really bring in certain systems in place, it would be rather difficult and time drawn for us to implement the new kind of a smart system here in terms of smart cities. So I think that is where I come to the third and most important point, that is the urban local body. The urban local body is the main organization in the city which has to give all the approvals, and every developer worth his salt knows that there are such a large number of approvals that one needs to take. And yes, I am sure that there are so many technologies available which will say that yes, you can do this online, but the online will happen only when you press that button, otherwise it will not happen. And remember that there is a human being sitting behind the online. So, well, I represent the Delhi Urban Art Commission here. I am the chairman, and one of the things that we do is we receive proposals from various local bodies, and we need to give the sanctions. And if we have to give these sanctions very quickly, then we need to examine the proposals in great detail, and we also have to give these sanctions in a very short period of time. And that, I am sure, is the case with all the urban local bodies and the key functionaries who are, some of them are represented here on the dais. And therefore, that is where we come to the crucial issue of human capacities, because you do have a special purpose vehicle that is envisioned, that is going to implement the smart city program, but ultimately government is something that you have to live with. You have to plug in somewhere down the line into the governmental systems, and therefore the human capacities in the urban local bodies and how they can be improved, that becomes extremely important when we are trying to implement this whole idea of smart city. But nevertheless, I am quite positive. There are many. Just now I was very happy when Siva gave me this auto DCR brochure. I think he is going to make a presentation. That is only one of the sanctions. The municipal plan sanction is only one of the 40 or 45 odd sanctions that I need to take. So therefore, it's not that we are not looking at the problem. We are looking at the problem, and some initiatives have already been made, even in the Delhi building bylaws, on which I had worked closely with the ministry. We have worked out certain systems wherein we can reduce the number of windows. I often hear, and I'm sure you've also often heard about this quest for a single window clearance system. I think in urban development at least, single window is something that you better forget about. It's just not possible. It will not happen in the near future. In most countries in the world, you don't have a single window as far as urban development is concerned at least, and therefore maybe we can try and reduce the number of windows and then take our smart initiatives forward. So by and large, these are the few ideas of mine which I thought I should put forward for your kind consideration, and I'll request, I'll thank the chairman once again for giving me the opportunity to jump the line. I'm afraid I have to leave in a few minutes, so if there are any questions, I'll be very glad to take them. Thank you so much.
Thank you, sir. So if any question which you want to address to Mr. Rao, you can do it now. You have 5 minutes.
Sorry, a couple of quick comments, Professor Rao. Obviously, you came out of, as a very sobering voice in one level. Another level was, what do you call, one is economic side, public good. Another is on the technology side. So I want to sort of convey the point regarding technology. Let me take in the random order in the absence of, to protect the time of everybody. Single window. Single window does not mean, like the so-called ranking on ease of doing business, the e-biz. Single window does not mean that you give something and immediately everybody press one button, everybody's approval comes. No. there is it provides, like in the case of passport, whatever is required, you submit all of them. One shot, multiple shot, whichever way. Back end, maybe 20 department, 20 agencies may be involved. There is a workflow behind it. When one agency does it, it automatically go to the next, like a file goes from A to B to C. Currently, you have to run from this department to that department to that department. What is the so-called electronic era does is, the back end, after, say, urban, that goes to some other agency, some other agency, some other agency. I don't have to run to all. That's all done in a back end. Let them take their proper time. Let them do application of mind. And then finally, I get the approval. I don't have to run from pillar to post. That is the principle of single window. I'm just making it one point. I fully agree with you. The rest of the things I leave it. I just want.
I think that's a good observation.
I would like to inform the audience also. It is not necessary that only IT solutions, which are workflow-based solutions, make this kind of single window possible. I have had experience in doing it totally manually as well. What you mentioned is quite right. There are 20 departments and you approach only one place and get the approval maybe 3 months down the line, but from one place. It was done in olden times, like 15 years ago, even manually by many of the departments. Because of the technology advancements, it has become a little more easier to do it, and it becomes more quick sometimes. But please remember that those 20 departments, all of them are not on single platform. Many of them are manual. Many of them are half, I would say, IT enabled. So it is a challenge. Your point is very valid, well taken. So, yes, right, sir. I would now request Mr. Jagan Shah, Director, National Institute of Urban Affairs, to share his views. Would you like to make? Okay, sure.
Thank you, Chairman, sir. I'm just more comfortable standing and talking, that's all. And my colleagues on the dais. I wish Professor Swamy had stayed back, because I did want to actually disagree with him, and I'm glad that the gentleman in the audience made this very crucial point that a single window doesn't have to be a single button, but it essentially is convergence of various types of information. I'll come to this a little later, but I just wanted to maybe just run through, given the fact that the subject is making ULB smart, innovations in governance, wanted to run through what I believe are some of the important aspects of this whole question about making governance smarter. Certainly, technology is not a silver bullet. Nobody could possibly argue that. A smart administrator is worth his or her weight in gold. No computer can replace that. And the human brain is, of course, far, far supreme to any computers. But having said that, we need to keep in mind that the horizon of the challenge that we face right now in terms of the urbanization of our country is one of mass migrations happening at a rapid pace. It's a backlog of infrastructure deficits which have developed over many decades, preceding independence as well, given the fact that the British really concentrated their efforts on very few of the cities that we have today out of the 4,041. And given the fact that due to a lot of lapses in terms of management of cities as well as planning of our cities, we have now accumulated a kind of chaos in our cities. It's a spatial chaos, it's a formal chaos in terms of the kinds of buildings and structures and roads and various kinds of subterranean infrastructure, debris of various kinds of historical acts, which now we are facing and we are trying to actually come to terms with. So given that kind of a scenario, technology offers us a way to do things a little faster. And I think speed is of essence in meeting the urbanization challenges of India, and that's why technology can play a very significant role, not because it replaces human intelligence, not by any stretch of the imagination does it actually replace human intelligence, but it can be a very good accompaniment to the vast human intelligence we have in our country. And that's, I believe, the important context in which we must understand the applications of technology and the applications of so-called smartness. I just wanted to quickly, if I may, just describe what are the different ways in which governance in our cities is beginning to get smarter. And of course, all of this is enabled in some way or the other by the ITES, the IT-enabled services. Of course, all of us now are using many of what are the outward-facing aspects of municipalities, the ways in which governments are collecting taxes or delivering services or reporting and disclosure functions, the ways in which reports can be generated. One of the first municipalities in the country, Rajkot municipality, started giving birth and death certificates almost in an automated way within OCR code, so that you could not duplicate that certificate and so on and so forth. And there was a back-end integration of that with the records and archives of the municipality. Websites are also becoming interactive tools so that you can actually allow citizens to interact with the municipality without needing a human interface. Then there is, of course, the ERP side of things, so the enterprise resource planning, the back-end operations, the ways in which those are becoming smarter simply by reducing a lot of paperwork. A very simple act of reducing paperwork, reducing bookkeeping functions has made us smarter in terms of the ways in which we harness data and analyze data and then report it in the more public-facing functions. Procurements are getting smarter. E-procurement is becoming an increasing standard and a norm. And this is actually a smarter way to do things because it deals with one of our biggest hurdles and one of our biggest challenges, which was how do you get rid of the middlemen, how do you get rid of the touts, how do you get rid of many people who were collecting rents in the kind of analog old-fashioned system. Then there is now, as a previous speaker mentioned, now a new era of engagement, the ways in which municipalities are engaging with citizens and other kinds of stakeholders using more smarter ways. And those smart means are not alone based on IT per se, but mobile telephony, for instance, or simply using media and what in government we call information, education, and communication, IEC tools, to reach out and engage with the public and with stakeholders. And this is becoming smarter and smarter. The previous speaker had mentioned this, the portal which is created by Bhubaneswar Municipal Corporation, which is a really remarkable public redressal system, which is responsive to the extent that it even shows you a trend in terms of the ways in which the public is raising certain kinds of questions. So you can know whether you're not the only one who is complaining about water logging in your area. You find that the entire city is actually complaining about precisely the same thing. And that gives a very different perspective, a far more productive aspect to the complaints and grievances. Websites are also being used now to solicit ideas. We are presently working with the Pune Municipal Corporation on a smart solutions contest in which the website was visited about 600,000 times, so 6 lakh visitors to that contest. Finally, about 6,500 ideas were put in, and we are presently running through those ideas to pick out what could be 3 solutions that can help Pune solve some of its problems. And these would be run through a jury process so that we make sure that the ideas are practical and implementable. Then there is the whole aspect of the intelligent city, which is really data gathering. Websites are becoming tools for gathering data, either real-time data so that you get to know about who's coming to your website. That's a very simple function. But you can begin to map all of the different automations that you're doing, all the mobile platforms you're using, in order to get real-time information about your city. We must keep in mind that Indian cities have been planned for almost 60 years using one source of data, which was the census. Population figures were probably the few reliable sources of data that on the basis of which an entire city was planned, which was ridiculous. I mean, today in the 21st century, we realize just how insane it is to base your entire planning on some number crunching on how many people you have. you realize that cities are about infrastructure, natural resources, space, land, historical features, interaction of people, mobility, transportation. How could you possibly capture that complexity using population data alone? So we've got to find more and more sources of data about the city itself. And intelligent platforms are beginning to bring all of that data together. My last point, the real smartness about cities must lie in the spatialization of all of this data. Cities are fundamentally spatial entities, and that's why the real cutting edge of making government smart is going to be government that begins to look at its city as a spatial entity. And this is where global information systems play a fundamental and game-changing role. GIS systems are beginning to change the entire way in which we look at cities. Globally, cities like San Francisco, Barcelona, Chicago, London, Singapore, all of these cities which we hold to be the models for us, are creating simulations of their cities. The technology allows you to do it. You can actually have in a room, in a hall, 1/4 the size of this, a simulation of what your city is, a representation in 3 dimensions, pretty much like a game that is played all over the world. You get to see that city, and it has data embedded into it. And that is really the cutting edge. And this, along with ERP functions, along with the automation and the public-facing functions of government, is really the, in a sense, the next frontier in terms of smart governance. And I think we must understand that these systems that allow us to take decisions faster, that make us converge all our efforts, these are really the smart systems. The Smart City mission, just last point, Smart City mission has been talked about again and again, and there are a lot of people who are detractors, and they say, hey, it's just about IT solutions. That's not true. The Smart City mission, actually, one of the fundamental building blocks of smart cities in our country needs to be convergence. It's a mission in which you have to plan so that you can converge all the efforts, whether they are in housing or they are in infrastructure development, transportation, delivery of services, health, education, all of this converging into one space, which is your city. And that's what the Smart City Plan is going to be. Hopefully, if we work with the spirit of the Smart Cities mission, that plan is going to converge all of these efforts and give us a handle on the complexity of what a city is. So I believe that we are looking at an exciting time in terms of how government is going to actually become really smart and much more speedy and prompt with the ways in which it deals with urbanization and the problems of the city. So I look forward to all of that, and thank you very much for giving me this opportunity. Thank you.
Before we start with 2 presentations, one is on data analytics in urban governance and one by Mr. Siva, I would request if any of the audience has any questions so that we address it now, and then the presentations, maybe they may be long, then we may lose the thread of the discussion. So if anybody has any question, we'll try to address. Any urban development area question I may be able to handle. He is also an expert, so, but some specific question about some city, we may not be. Yes, please.
Hello. Yeah. My question is with respect to mapping the GIS to the urban properties. India, where the development is already there.
Please speak a little louder. I can't hear you. Yeah.
Hello. Yeah, audible. My question is with respect to mapping the urban properties on the GIS, wherein the coordinates of the property is something wherein the GIS coordinates do not match the real entity. So how do we bridge this gap?
They will not match with what?
The exact the exact coordinates of any property in the urban which are there on the papers do not match with the exact coordinates on the land. So whenever existing parcel of the land has to be mapped with the GIS, so either the existing land has to be coordinated or the map which is there in the records. So there is a big challenge in terms of bridging, mapping the existing land, the coordinates of existing land with the paper records and then in the GIS software. So any clue on how do we bridge this?
As far as I understand, that many of the states, they have done the revenue departments have done cadastral mapping of their land parcels and all as a part of their. The revenue departments in most of the state governments are in the process, or some of them have done it. I remember, I think Karnataka, maybe even Maharashtra, they have done the cadastral mapping based on latest technologies. So in those cases, your problem of mapping will be very minimal. But with my experience in J&K, where we have not done that there is a huge gap. The old maps are based on that chain survey methodology, and chain survey methodology doesn't even match with the ETS methodology today. Forget about GIS mapping. This challenge has to be handled. If not today, maybe tomorrow. And there will be a solution which will be formulated with the technical experts and the administrative officials to reach to some middle ground. I can't suggest any solution right here, but I'm sure there are many areas. One which I suggested to my state government was that wherever there are huge gaps, you try to minimize, and after you have done it, there will be certain areas you will find that a land parcel reduces. Sometimes a particular land parcel comes out as a bigger. This has to be written off, just like any other asset is written off. Nobody accepted it because it is a big political issue also. But then someday somebody will have to do it. Now either you do it formally and then you take away all these discrepancies. But this is one solution which I had suggested. If you, yeah, please.
Yeah, that's a very pertinent question. I had worked as a municipal commissioner and as a district magistrate. I did 2 GIS projects. In fact, I have a presentation in the latest session. The main problem is the land records. The survey number wise land parcel is mostly not digitized. So in my previous assignment, I was DM of Wardha district, Gandhiji Sevagram, the place where it is located. So we digitized every single land parcel first. Then built a GIS platform in which first the land records are fully digitized, the maps are digitized, the land parcels, then you build the property tax. Now we bought latest sub-meter resolution maps, which is like 0.46 meter resolution. You can literally make out a tree or a building. So we got people to go around with GPS devices, and they literally marked the outer boundaries of each and every property. So 4 lakh properties were actually put on the map. So when you have, the cost is very high because you will have to put people on the ground to do what they call georeferencing and ground truthing. So it is possible, but it's a little expensive. But the tricky part is the land parcels never match. So unless you go into a resurvey, which is a very vast exercise which Maharashtra government is just about to do, a complete resurvey. I mean, it's a historic event when everything is brought. But with existing records, it's possible, but it's a little expensive.
Yeah, exactly. That is what I was thinking, that most of the state governments are doing what they call settlement in the revenue department's parlance, which is resurvey. And it is a historical event. I don't think many of the state governments have completed such kind of settlement with the new technology. All state governments are in the various stages of this. So, as I said, someday somebody has to find a middle path, and I'm very sure maybe 10 years down the line, somebody will have to write off certain parcels of land which actually were not existing. They were just a mistake probably of chain survey. Any other question? No questions? So let's move on to the presentation. So I'll request Mr. Shiva, please come forward and make your presentation.
I would request.
This one works.
My CTO Giridhar is here.
We'll quickly run through the PowerPoint and run the main move.
Smart Law Meridian and smart e-lets and smart food and smart speakers have already done. And probably slight smart sleepiness will be also there. So let us smartly wake up, and the smart 6 minutes will make you different. The smart DCR presentation for automation of building plan approvals. I am Architect Shiva, and he is Giridhar, our CTO. We represent Vinza Solutions from Chennai.
Yeah.
So we had come across, as an architect, we had come across the way that building plan approvals and the user and the government and the planning authorities in the middle as an architect, as a designer, or as a licensed surveyor, or as a civil engineer, we have come across some difficult parts which had an intention for us to automate this. And 25 years back, we started this, our organization, Vinza Solutions, and we had an opportunity to automate regularization process in Tamil Nadu. That was the first initiation that we could able to, when the government announces you can regularize your deviated building, everybody jumped into that, and many files have been piled up, and there was a situation they couldn't handle it. So we as an architectural company, we walked in and said, we had a tool, we will repair your buildings and give your assistance for planners to give approvals. That is how we started. So then it on a court case, on a public writ case, it has been quashed. Then we represented the government again when we were able to repair the building plans. Why not we propose the buildings on automation? So that was the birth of Smart DCR, and it was timely tested. And for the past, from 2002, we are present in Tamil Nadu with Chennai Metropolitan Development Authority. And recently, we have been totally present in Directorate of Town and Country Planning, and then Trichy Corporation and Madurai Corporation. And recently, we are in Delhi, Greater Noida, and last week, we have taken up Mysore Development Authority. And we are sure we'll be with all of you. So that with that confidence, this Smart DCR helps you on the automation of building plan bylaws, online submission. Actually, I thank Mr. Rao. He is complimenting our product, and I could able to meet Mr. Sona, who are an earlier user. And in that sense, when you observe this particular thing, we are going quickly, smartly for you to understand. You're all smart people. When you see this number 6, that was the manual scrutiny process time, which was reduced by our Smart DCR product. The rest of the things are all the same. When you apply, you have to submit your legal document, you have to submit your as on-site condition, and then other processes are the same. So we identified the area where we can reduce by automation is that pink number 6. Now you see the 6 is being reduced, and there is a greater advantage. More than 80% we reduce the time on that. And overall of planning approval, it is 30% reduced. So in what way this automation is going to help? There are 2 reasons. One is the smart way to accept this, because there is a transition happening. Previously, architects were holding a rotary pencil and a pen, and then we started holding the keyboards. So there was a transition and there was a resistance, and we have been transformed. And similarly, with the government, with the planners, and with the user, and somebody was asking about a single window system. And I normally, as a fun, I used to say, the single window system is nothing but one liaison officer. The single window system, he carries the file between the department and between the client. And whatever he says becomes the God's word for the client. Though you as a technologist, as a planner, whatever you claim, the client never accepts it. So I always say that, and we from Vinza always conduct a kiosk running training to the public, because the public never submit the whole document properly. Even I am challenging you, go back home, take about your asset, check your list of file, you will be missing anything too. That too only the planners will be referring, the delay happens. So we felt that in automation, the scrutiny of drawing, if you make it quicker, at least the client go back to the architect for a revisal of a drawing. In case a setback has been deviated, the architect will claim based on his creativity that it has to be done. But his creativity cannot be put into place like this law meridian unless otherwise the government or the planning body approves it. So the particular smart DCR helps you on that, and Giri will tell the process here.
So the architects or the licensed surveyors first submit the drawing in digital format. We say DWG, so you could use any software, but give the drawing in DWG format. And it goes through a pre-check process wherein if there are any discrepancies in the drawings go back to the applicant for correction and comes back. And in the scrutiny process, data is extracted from the drawings, compared with the bylaws, and a report of compliance is generated, which is used by the planners to give an approval. This is a simple process we automated, and later.
One second.
Yeah.
Generally, there will be a question of any user as an architect or a designer. This is one, now everybody uses CAD. In most of the offices, you can't find a drafting board. It has already become an antique property. And in a CAD, it is required only a DWG file. See, some of you can understand that this particular smart DCR doesn't require any special or prerequisite software or tailor-making is not necessary. Any architect has got a CAD software at his office. He creates a drawing with some elements. So those elements will be automatically read through by our prerequisite conditions of following certain color and layers. As simple as that. Every architect fixes up a wall as a color and window as a color or a ceiling as a color. So that is to be defined to suit this product. That is all needed. You can submit any DWG file.
Okay. Pardon?
I'll come back to you. I'll take your question. Please.
Okay. Once the process is complete, somebody mentioned here a single window clearance is where you put everything in a single place. This is what we have done, where the access is given to various departments which give NOC, could be fire department, could be highways department, depending on what the size of the project is. Once the drawing is in principle approved by the development authority or municipalities, notification goes to the NOC agencies. They can access the drawing and relevant application and give an approval. So the applicant need not run to different departments for NOCs. This is what we have now started implementing, and this should be the process in the near future.
He was asking about the GIS longitude and latitude to be placed. Say, for example, even for any land document verification, we ask for the PATA. So the PATA has got a particular FMB sketch. That FMB sketch, as far as our experience, the government or the particular planning department asking the client to get a certification of that particular PATA, which is an extract from the government department only. It is to be signed by the Deputy Tahsildar level or Tahsildar level. In some state there is in practice. Now we are trying to say which is not required. Your particular planning department can access the server of the particular land records to verify the particular FMB sketches. That is what he is trying to express.
Then what we have introduced, the next level is the field staff doing inspection at sites can use mobile devices to record any deviations from the approved values and notify a chain of reaction, could be a stop work or demolition notice or whatever. So this is the follow-up on approvals. In short, the benefits, benefits. So it's a system of secure system of processing, reduction of time taken, uniform interpretation of the bylaws by planners or the approving authorities, and no human intervention during approval process. From the time the drawing is submitted to the generation of compliance report, it's all automated. There is no human intervention. Okay. So with this, I come to the PowerPoint, end of PowerPoint presentation.
Are you going to show a movie?
Yeah. Basically.
Yeah. The smart DCR helps you in two ways for the client as well as for the planning department. See, now generally every planning department, whenever a client submits for his particular proposed building approval, he submits along with this architect's drawing, taken an ammonia print of 5 prints, or recently it can be placed by online, and then along with the documents. So the particular planners are trying to verify the documents for the ownership approval, for the ownership verification by the encumbrance certificate and other thing. So that is going to take equal time, and the drawing verification, and then after doing the both verification only, the client is getting notified that what is wrong in his plan or what is a requirement on legal documents. But currently through Smart DCR, the planning department as well as the user can pre-check the drawing, whether it's according, for example, if you are trying to do this La Meridian as a example as a building, this requires a particular extent of land. The extent of land may be 50 square meter less or 500 square meter less. But without knowing that, my own fellowship probably doing the drawing as architects, and the client will also insist to submit the drawing and verify with the government. So this thing can be avoided by a pre-check. The Smart DCR in a highest amount, it helps the authorities time by not going through the legal document as well as the drawing. Initially you can go through the drawing whether this particular land size is fit enough for the particular building, and any bylaws are not to the acceptation of the planning department, it can be rejected initially, or it can be asked to resubmit with the particular bylaw changes. I mean, the drawing has to be compared to the particular bylaws.
So we have a short movie of the whole process, which will take you through the entire cycle of building plan scrutiny process.
Here you can see in two ways. One is as a user he is submitting as from his architect office, the client is submitting through, and then how the authorities are checking that. Both the things you will see it. So smart people, kindly listen to Smart DCR, please.
So once you log in as an architect, you will see what the current status of all your applications. Then you can start a new submission, pick the country, state or whatever.
Most of our bylaws are the same. And throughout the European, and we have been ruled by them, and mostly 80% of the bylaws are same. Only 20% adoption is to be changed from place to place. This is our larger experience we have come across.
So the applicant gives the basic inputs of the property and the property details, and picks the drawing for submission, and once the drawing is uploaded, it gives a unique reference number, and with that the client end is over, the server end takes over, and first it cleans up the drawing, and the pre-check, it checks the drawing entities for various parameters, overlapping text, line compliance, color compliance. Once all that pre-check process is over, it starts extracting data from the submitted drawing.
Now it's happening. Floor-wise it's happening now.
It checks for setbacks,
height of the building, parking regulations, habitual areas, sectional heights, based on your FSI.
and converts the drawing into a PDF format, so the during scrutiny time, drawing is not getting edited inadvertently. And the reports are also generated. Then notification goes to the scrutiny officer. He can log in and view the files allocated to him. He can check the reports first. Then if required, normally they check the drawing, otherwise the reports alone are enough. And the report covers every single parameter which is in the bylaws. In terms of values which are min and max, if the drawing's value is within those limits, it's compliant, otherwise it's non-compliant. That's all the report says, and it helps take a decision on the approval process.
This particular Smart DCR, for you to understand quickly, it checks even a staircase riser and the tread, and the handrail height, and the sizes of the toilet, what is the ventilation required, what is the habitual room, how many square foot, for example, if it is for a hospital, for a 15-bed, car parking is needed. Non-bedded area, for every 100 square meter, what is the car parking required? What is the visitor car parking required? It will scan through everything and give you the result. It can be connected to GIS also.
Then once the approval is over, it goes into the architect's notification, and they start paying the scrutiny fee. It's linked to the payment gateway. And once the scrutiny fee is complete, you can start the NOC process, where the basic input, what you submitted, is taken in for the NOC applications, and depending on the project size, the NOC departments are listed. In this example, we are doing a fire submission.
The fire brigade watches through a 7.2 meter of drive length inside to put off a fire, or the arm length to be of 50 meter last from the site boundary. All those, that is the only area that fire department.
So they get a notification, and on the notification they can log in and see the drawing and approve it. You don't, applicant need not run around with the fire brigade clearance applications to the physical office.
Last time this was been placed with Urban Ministry, and this has been recommended to various usage of various municipalities and corporations and authorities.
So next time the architect logs into NOC, the fire department will not be there once the approval is given. So this is a simple way of getting NOCs from a central server location. With this, we come to the end of the presentation.
And the architect also get the notification that in which the non-compliant area, Giri, we just missed that. In non-compliant area, it will refer to the architect back to his mail saying that based on these bylaw numbers, these sections, you have been not adopted to the particular compliance. That will be also referred to the architect so that let him not search through a bigger A0 size drawing to verify where he went wrong. This particular smart DCR product will hatch that particular deviated area and refer to the architect and to the client to understand and come back with a revised drawing.
We have a detailed demo in the stall. Anybody interested can come and have a look at a detailed live demonstration of this same product.
Yeah. And
thank you.
At this junction, I appreciate the smart people who are present in the morning and who are left already. And I appreciate the smartest people who are here to listen to us and carry this message to your particular state and region. And I would request Vikas, he is our local representative in Delhi, and Tripathi is here. I would request you to distribute this to everybody and kindly carry this smart DCR and become more smarter, sir. Thank you, sir. Thank you. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everybody. Thanks to the chair to allow me to make this presentation. Of course, this presentation is more from my technical interest. I'm basically a mechanical engineer, a lot of interest in IT. But it comes from a kind of an anguish after working for 3 years as a municipal commissioner and another 3 years as DM of Wardha district in Maharashtra. I realized the potential of IT. We had done some GIS projects and other implementation. Then you see there's the technology world is actually galloping at breakneck speed. And government's understanding of what technology can do is actually far behind. So it was more of a personal discovery in which I discovered these technologies, and that's what I want to share with you on how data and analytics can really make a difference to urban governance. So this is what I call as the big three B for big data, I for Internet of Things, and GIS. I'll share some of my thoughts with you on this. So it said that data is the new oil. It's so powerful. Just a little bit of history. People are using whale, blue whale, and things like that. They're taking out oil from them and using it. You'll be surprised to know, like only in 1859, somebody invented a drilling machine and extracted the oil. And you will see that within a few years, refineries and exports and pipelines were set up, and exports across the continents were happening. So from 35 barrels a day, oil production went to 800,000 barrels a day in about 40 years. So we have seen, this is common knowledge for anybody interested in computers. We come from mainframes to internet, and data systems in government are mostly the old RDBMS systems. There's a lot of things happening, which is new SQL. For people who are into development, I think this is a new opportunity which really exists. And in fact, data warehousing things have been completely skipped in most of the governments. We don't have data warehouses. There's hardly anything called business intelligence, which is also quite costly. Now it is said that 90% of the data existing in the world is in the last 2 years. This is from IBM's study. So you can't even believe the amount of data which is actually getting created on a daily basis. This is what it is. And where is it coming from? And which is what urban systems are capable of capturing and analyzing. Structured data is like what we are already carefully designed and taken up. It may be ticketing, sales, surveys, things like that. Semi-structured data. This is where the world is really going very fast. Things which are machine readable, unstructured data, which is blogs, text, and so on. Now, data is everywhere, but it's not consumed. This is a very interesting quote. The data is just like crude. Unless we refine it, we can't really use it. And government is probably sitting on a lot of data and not creating enough data, but it does very little to actually refine it. So big data is a technology which I call it's a data refinery for government. So these are some basics which they talk about. It's very fast. There's too many types of data which is coming at you. The huge volumes are coming at you. There are some other parameters. And everybody does their own version of the database, and they don't talk. I did a data integration project in my district. It's very difficult to put things together because they don't talk the same language. It's not designed. People say it's impossible to do data integration in government. This is where I think we should look at in smart cities. You'll be surprised the amount of technologies, and these are all in practice. The number of technologies which are available and which other countries are using is tremendous. Real-time analytics, there is a simulation which Mr. Shah had just said. Plethora of systems are available, and we are somewhere, somewhere in the 90s. We are not even started using most of these technologies in practice. So this is what the World Economic Forum ranks our country. That's the orange one. This is a ranking published annually. It's called the Network Readiness Index. So we are not very far away from most of the underdeveloped world, even though we are a technology giant, a software giant. And this says, and what can government do to change it? It should create more data. Why should we really need it? So basically we understand, I ran a city for 3 years. It's a very complex system. The system of systems is very difficult to even see what the correlations are. We can start to simulate them, as Mr. Shah just mentioned. We can do scenario building, we can do forecasting. And for utilities, it is worth its weight in gold. You can do preventive maintenance. You can use database design, real-time monitoring, fault detection, and so on. Let me give you a small example. If you have enough data on traffic, you can actually make out what one bus strike, this is from UK, one bus strike and the whole traffic pattern changes. One on the left is without the traffic strike and one on the right is with the traffic strike. This is what data modeling, data capturing can actually give you. Taking the transport example, so we can even use mobiles from passengers, citizens who are volunteers to model data, which is actually being done by MIT in Singapore. You can actually create congestion maps by capturing data from suppose you keep tracking the mobile every 1 minute and you get a complete map of the movement of a vehicle. So you can see the traffic time, intraday variation. There's something called the Oyster card data, which London is actually having. You can actually map who goes where in a real time. Imagine Delhi Metro shuts down today. You know, the conference is over, but the Delhi Metro shuts down. How will the traffic behave? You can model it with this data. If there's flooding, how does it get modeled? Suppose all the taxis in Delhi take an impromptu strike. Can we predict what will be the waiting time in ITO? Probably this model will give you some kind of a inkling. So we can even model based on the rate of cars which are sold in Delhi, how much is being registered, and then the planning part. You know, what are we building into urban planning? How much parking are we allowing? Is the rate of growth of sales matching the rate of growth of parking space? Is your FSI matching your consumption needs? And public transport, are we building it? So there's a lot of talk about multimodal transport. You know, you park, walk, take the metro, and then you walk again, etc. So why don't we have a single card for the buses and the metro? Can't government do that in a smart city? Maybe even parking, you can have a single smart card. We can have prepaid smart cards for tolling. In the long run, all this is, the work-life balance will come only after you capture the data. Now, there's a lot of talk internationally, even World Bank and United Nations. I had the opportunity to be in France recently. We interacted with even Harvard Kennedy School of Government. A lot of talk about data-based policy and how we need to create policies based on hardcore data. So this is what in fact Mr. Shah just mentioned is like agent-based simulations, literally. Yeah. So let me run through these things. So there are some simple things which can be done immediately: land registration, building permissions. There is a lot of things which can be captured, and data can be captured with these specific metrics. Now we can even build the market intelligence into the systems, where even people can actually supply data to the planners. So a lot of techniques which are there. I'll not go into that. And what is really interesting is a lot of technologies like Hadoop which are coming up, which are not taken up by government. I think it's a greenfield opportunity. And I'll just go to the second part, which is the Internet of Things. I think a little bit was talked about in the morning. So this is, every single thing can be laid with sensors and some of the components. So we need to start building networks, devices, and even control systems. So these are some of the basic. This is the fabric on which the rest of the smart network will be built. So these are directly linked to savings in cost for utilities. There are like so many types of connections in which private participants can enter the market. So there is a lot of scope for safety in health, waste management, solar cities can be linked with Internet of Things. Let me give you a small example, and then in the next couple of slides I'll wind up. We need some very Indian context innovations. They're like hawker policies which are supposed to be there, stray cattle, energy theft, garbage buildup, pollution, choked drains. So we feel that sensors are for European cities. I think these are even simpler things in which we can put sensors, and it will make a lot of sense to have them. So the third part, there's a complete session on GIS. I will not go into this, but there's a huge synergy which all these three technologies can create in urban systems, in which we don't have drainage maps in urban areas. There's pollution, road layers, water pipes. So GIS combined with different technologies can have a great impact on how you plan. So this is what in fact we tried to do in Wardha, which I'll share in the GIS thing. We did urban planning, we did crime mapping, and we did mining lease management. And then in conclusion, there's a data culture needs to be created in urban local bodies to make it smarter. We should start asking for data, and in which private partners can really help in creating the framework in which the basics of everyday living can work. I just want to mention this city in Colombia, in which the real innovation didn't come from data also. This is a vertical city, slum basically. The innovation came from putting an escalator and saving time and energy for people. They had to climb 28 floors equivalent to go from the bottom of the city to the top. So these are sometimes, it is a non-data solution, could also work. There's a very famous book which talks about, Marco Polo meeting Kublai Khan, the Mongolian emperor. He talks about 55 different cities. And in the end, he realizes he's been always talking about one city, and he gave 55 different versions of it, which is Venice. So all of our cities, we talk from a technology angle or from an economist angle, for urban planners angle, or a municipal commissioner's angle, or a political angle. But all of them exist together. So we should never forget the common man, and the real smart cities will be reaching to the person beyond the digital divide, beyond the mobile divide. That's where data analysis and data capturing can really work. You use data for the people who don't know what data is, and try to make their economy better, make their livelihood better, and that's where smartness would really come into our country. So I once again thanks ILETS for this opportunity, and so thanks to the chair to allowing me to make this presentation. Thank you.
Any questions? I would like to thank ILETS as well as Ravi for creating a platform like this and invite a whole array of people and experts on the panel. At least I have been benefited because we will be planning for smart cities in the coming months, and I'm sure that these technologies and the people who are here, I have interacted with many of them in the morning also, and they are very enthusiastic about the work which they have done in other countries already. And I think we will be able to adapt a lot of this into the planning for our smart cities. So I would like to thank the participants also, that they were patient enough to listen to all of us and go through the presentation. Thank you.
So beautifully and patiently moderating the session and chairing the session. Thank you very much, and sorry for any inconvenience if because of paucity of time was caused. Very quickly, I will request Mr. Pathak to present mementos to our eminent guests on stage. To Mr. Naveen Sona, Director General of Vanamati Government of Maharashtra, for a very beautiful and very nice presentation on concept of smart city. Then Mr. Jagan Shah, Director, National Institute of Urban Affairs. Mr. R. Siva, President and CEO of Winzaz Solutions India Private Limited. I'll request for a group photo. And then I also request Mr. Jagan Shah to present a memento to our Honorable Chair of the session for today, Mr. Vipul Pathak, Commissioner cum Secretary, Department of Housing and Urban Development, Jammu and Kashmir. So just quick group photo I request for. Thank you very much.